Nancy Cohen, and we're in my studio in Jersey City, New Jersey. Heads up that I'm filming this as I walk and talk, so apologies if it's a bit wobbly and a little bit of a strange noise when I move the tripod around. I've been living and working in Jersey City for more than 30 years, but I've been in this studio about a year. In this video, I'll talk about several large-scale wall drawings from an ongoing series called The Work of Time. At the core of all of my work is the intense contradiction between fragility and strength, both in our personal lives and in the broader environment. I move between thinking about the vulnerable tenacity of the individual and a broader focus on our waterways and the delicate balance they maintain to survive. Clearly, our personal survival and that of our environment go hand in hand and couldn't be more obvious now. I've lived close to the Hudson River for most of my life, and in walking distance to the New York City end for almost 30 years. In color, texture, and form, my drawings and sculptures have always unconsciously and abstractly referenced water. For the past 15 years, the main conscious focus of my work has been on issues at the interface of our waterways and the man-made world. I've collaborated with scientists, environmentalists, and landscape architects to better understand the environmental issues affecting these waterways and to incorporate that understanding into what I do. But more significantly, I've walked, drawn, kayaked, and photographed these landscapes and internalized them through personal experience. When I'm in nature, I'm drawn both to its vastness and to its intimacy, and try to get both these experiences into the work. I'm going to share 3 drawings in this studio visit. The first, Tacking Home, is based on an experience I had in the summer of 2018, but it took quite some time to process before I began to make any art out of it. I spent 2 weeks on a sailboat in Samana Bay, Dominican Republic, with a socio-environmental organization called Ninth Wave Global. They bring small groups of people together to learn about environmental issues facing particular communities and to meet and sometimes collaborate with local grassroots activists. This on-the-ground engagement is partnered with time exploring in as unmediated ways as is possible, both pristine landscapes and very polluted ones. At the end of an engaging and thought-provoking 2 weeks, we were heading back to Samana. It was quite windy and blowing in the wrong direction, so we were using the motor for what was expected to be about a 3-hour trip. It was my turn to drive the boat, and having never done this before, I was instructed to steer straight ahead toward a particular mountain in the distance. Focused clearly on the mountain, I did not notice the invasive plants I motored us into. They clogged the motor, and after several hours, when it was impossible to clean them out enough to fix the engine, we started sailing back, tacking against the wind. It became about a 12-hour trip. We'd run out of food and water, and were sailing into the middle of the night, always tilted on one side or another. We were soaking wet, salty, and exhausted. It was both a thrilling and frightening experience. I had confidence we would physically survive, but was also aware that I had rarely been in such an extreme interaction with the forces of nature. Once I was back in New Jersey, the darkness, the power of the wind and splashing water, the changing directions, and those small invasive plants were prominent in my mind. Those became the elements I wanted to express in this drawing. The experiences that generate the images and feelings in my work are not meant to be literal interpretations of an actual or visual experience. Rather, they are a personal reflection on engaging in changing landscapes and waterways in the time of climate change. I make the paper I use in these drawings. It's an organic process which uses natural fibers and water and allows me to create variations in light and texture that become part of the meaning of the work. In a way akin to how salt and fresh water move and mix in the Hudson, I'm interested in how the movement of water picks up pieces of things, organic and otherwise, and transports and transforms those elements into something and somewhere else. These drawings are also a reflection on that transformation. What seems like painting or sewing is a kind of drawing I am doing with very thick pigmented paper pulp, which adheres to the ground I've created and also causes a buckling on the surface. In January, I spent another week with Ninth Wave Global. One day we were hiking in the national park Isla de Espiritu Santo. We'd spent several hours walking through dry, brushy, and parched-looking desert landscape. We climbed over a mountain and saw an extraordinarily beautiful coastline. I'm not sure whether the tide was coming in or out, but the result was a spiral pattern of sand and water mixing. That was the starting point for this drawing. I was trying to capture the feeling of the movement of water, the surprise and joy of the visual experience, and the transitory nature of the tides. I was working on this drawing for several months when COVID hit New York and New Jersey. It has been an isolating and especially early on, scary experience. Somehow, the sadness accompanying the virus has me thinking even more about both beauty and survival. Early on in the making, the drawing was considerably darker than it is now. At some point, the idea of adding gold to the piece came in. I was hesitant to head in that direction, but the idea stayed with me, and eventually I went for it. For me, the gold has a spiritual and ephemeral quality that feels attuned to this moment. Simultaneously, I've been working on another piece with a very different tone. I've been living in New Jersey for almost all of my adult life. I'm drawn to the adaptations and resilience of nature in such an industrial environment. I spent years exploring, documenting, and making work reflecting on various aspects of the rivers of New York and New Jersey, especially where they interface with industry and urban life. Like many New Jersey residents, I've spent too much time traveling on the New Jersey Turnpike. An ongoing mystery has always been the intense orange flames coming out of the power plants around Exit 13. In contrast to the intense beauty of Baja California, this past January I spent an afternoon with a photographer friend in Linden, New Jersey. We spent time around the periphery of the oil tanks and factories, in residential neighborhoods, and in a cemetery across Morses Creek from Bayway Refinery. Morses Creek is a famously contaminated stream meandering through this area, yet still filled with waterfowl and plant life, despite the clearly unhealthy water. This drawing is not based on a particular site, but began to take shape after the day in Linden. The mysterious orange light emerging from the darkness, and the very unexpected juxtapositions of toxic industry, residential architecture, and the proximity of the river was weaving in and out of the drawing as I continued to work. Once completed, I could reflect on the desolateness of the space and how that has also felt very parallel to this moment. As we continue to confront the virus, weakening environmental protections, and protests over inequity in our society, I am attempting to make work mindful of this time. I am thinking of the precariousness of our natural environment, our societal structures, and our personal safety. We are facing the ravages of nature on multiple levels. I am grateful to be an artist with a studio to process all we are experiencing. Thanks very much to Honoring the Future for inviting me to share my work, and to you for joining me on this studio visit.